Hare Krishna. So today we're continuing in the Bhagavad Gita portion of our Iskana DC Bhakti Shastri class. We are in the midst of chapter 18, and we're going to cover verses 23 through 44. This is the 35th part of the Bhagavad Gita portion, and I tried to make it kind of a discrete section here where there's a unity within the things we're going to cover, and break off when kind of a new topic or at least more explanation is given next time. So we'll start where we left off last time, text 23. And the action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. So we're carrying on with this series of descriptions of different things in the three modes. Last time it was the doer, the action, and the intelligence, I think, was there. And now we have actually... and so now we're picking up here with the doer, the intelligence, and the three things we covered last time at the end. Now we're starting out with the doer, the action itself, not the doer. Okay, and then we're going to cover some other things in the three modes. So we're getting this more detailed look. Chapter 14 was about the three modes, and now continuing on, we're getting a lot more detail about how those modes look and what things they affect. So that action which is regulated, so that means niyatam, it means according to the scriptures, performed without attachment, without love or hatred. So it means that the action you do it whether it's pleasant or not, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. So even if the action is pleasant or unpleasant, or whether the result is pleasant or unpleasant, you perform your duty. And here, without attachment, or without, sometimes that's, people describe that as without identifying as the doer. We heard that previously. So what we've heard about before, but you can have people in certain modes that act in different modes. That's how people raise themselves up. So that's why the action also. The person in that particular mode, they will tend to act in this way, okay? But they can also act in a different way. And you can judge the person, generally the actions and the persons will go together. Somebody in the mode of passion is going to act in the mode of passion, but it doesn't necessarily have to be so. And also, because we know also that people can be primarily in one, but there's still admixtures of the others. So it's possible for someone in the mode of goodness to act in the mode of passion at times, or in the mode of ignorance at times even. So that's why these things are separated. The doer and the action. So it's regulated, it means it's authorized by scripture, performed without attachment, without either attachment for the result or for the particular activity itself, or without desire for the actions. That's mode of goodness, so that sounds pretty familiar as we've gone through the mode of goodness. And Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, regulated occupational duties, as prescribed in the scriptures. So he explains that niyatam. In terms of the different orders and divisions of society, performed without attachment or proprietary rights. This is interesting. I think here Prabhupada is bringing in that other meaning of not being the doer. And therefore without any love or hatred, and performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Without self-satisfaction or self-gratification are called actions in the mode of goodness. Now here Prabhupada is giving us a little taste of bhakti. As he says, in Krishna consciousness. And where that part is Prabhupada is always trying to instruct us. His purpose in Bhagavad Gita was to help people. And in this day and age, there really isn't another process that's successful besides bhakti, even though there's kind of other, different yogas that are mentioned in the early parts of the Bhagavad Gita. It's very clear that we can't possibly go through those other yogas in this age. And so Prabhupada always focuses as much as he can on bhakti, and he tries to give us as much understanding of how we should practice bhakti as possible. And so the mode of goodness isn't transcendental. We mentioned that last time. Prabhupada mentioned in his purport very clearly that acting in the mode of goodness, we've heard, takes you up to the planets of the sages, or even all the way up to Lord Brahma's planet. By far the best thing you can do within the material realm, but it doesn't get you out. It provides a decent launching pad many times, and but only if you take the transcendental goodness, and that's what bhakti does. But the actions in bhakti fulfill all of the requirements of the mode of goodness, so they resemble each other a whole lot. And you just add this, what Prabhupada added, the essential ingredient to turn the mode of goodness into bhakti, performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So automatically, if you're serving somebody, doing something for their satisfaction, you'll do it whether it's pleasant to you or not. You'll do what is proper to do, what satisfies them, so it's regulated, right? And you're just looking for their satisfaction, so it's not a personal. You're not looking for some personal result. You're looking for their happiness. So it fulfills all those things nicely and adds that extra element of bhakti, which takes you to the spiritual level, Shuddha Sattva. And notice here, Prabhupada said, in the word for word, he translates that, Sangarahitam, without as attachment. And here he says as well, attachment or proprietary rights. And so it seems to me, Baladev Bijabhushan, he translates that Sangarahitam as free from false identity as the doer. So if you think that you're accomplishing the action independently, then you think that you own it, and you own the results. And he tells Krishna tells Arjuna previously, you have the right to perform your duty, but you don't have the right to the results. That's because you're not the one who does. You can't perform the action independently, so it's not yours. You can't claim it. So it seems to me that he's including that notion here in the purport. Prabhupada will do that. He'll give a certain meaning in the translation, and that's probably a more literal translation. His attachment, what he gives there is without attachment. It's a more literal translation of Sangarahitam. And then if other commentators, or if there's other meanings that are important in there, he'll bring those out in his purports. And so it looks to me like that's what he's done here, because we had that notion that you do the right thing, you do it whether the action is pleasant or unpleasant, you do it whatever the results are without desiring them, and you also acknowledge yourself. Krishna gave that whole explanation last time. He acknowledged that you can't act independently. Those are the real components there. And then araga dveshata, without love or hatred. And so this is my comment here. The love or hatred could arise from the expected fruits, like what happens immediately, or what could happen later on karmically. Or, as we heard previously, from the pleasantness or unpleasantness, or difficulty or not difficulty of the action itself. These are the things that happen. These are the things that can deviate you from doing the duty. Say, I don't want to do that. Arjuna didn't like. He didn't have so much trouble with fighting per se, but he didn't like fighting his relatives, and he thought that he was afraid that the results were going to be sinful. So kind of on both counts, he objected and didn't want to do his duty. So moving on to 24, so now we're going to take the action performed in passion, but action performed with great effort by seeking to gratify his desires, and enacted from a sense of false ego. So here's the doership thing coming back in. So this is expressed sa ahankarena. Is expressed explicitly in this verse, so it makes sense that the Sangarahitam included that meaning. But action performed with great effort, kama ipsuna. No, that's desires. Where's the effort? Bahula ayasam, great labor. And by seeking to gratify one's desires, kama ipsuna, fulfilling one's desires, and acted from a sense of false ego, think I'm the doer, is called action in the mode of passion. And so there's a certain optimism in the mode of passion where that gives you that energy and vitality to want to really work hard to get it. And if you think you can get it, then and you really want it, then it naturally gives you a certain enthusiasm. Yeah, so if you look here, kama ipsuna, in this verse, by one with desires for fruit of results, Prabhupada says, it contrasts with the mode of goodness, which is apala prepsuna, without desire for fruit of results. Ahankarena, with ego, contrasts with the sangarahaitam, without attachment or proprietary rights in the previous verse. So there's all pretty much the same items, and there's a different attitude towards these items. And these can be done. These are still doing the right thing. In this case, they're performing their duty, but they want the result. They think they're the ones who are doing it. They have a right to the result, and they're eager to do it. That's the motivating factors for those things. What's going to happen from it? If it looks like it's not going to be good, then they're going to have difficulty doing it. They're going to be inclined to. That's what it said. When the difficult is very difficult, or they don't like the result, then they lose the enthusiasm. So as somebody in the mode of passion, they don't always act according to the scriptural injunctions. But when it looks good, they're very enthusiastic. Now we move on to the mode of ignorance in 25. That action performed in illusion, mohat, in disregard of scriptural injunctions. Where does it say? Just as without considering the consequences. That's what it means. And parusham, self-sanctioned. The action performed in illusion, in disregard of scriptural injunctions, and without concern for future bondage or for violence or distress caused to others, is said to be in the mode of ignorance. And Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, one has to give account of one's actions to the state or to the agents of the Supreme Lord called the Yamadutas. And so if somebody is acting in an inappropriate manner, it may be something that's punishable by law. And so the state might cause them some future problems. Or if not, then karma. The Yamadutas, the agents of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and the judgment, the guy who passes judgment upon you, so it says that they don't consider the consequences, right, for themselves or for others. Prabhupada says, irresponsible work is destructive because it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunction. It is often based on violence and is distressing to other living entities. So they don't care whether it hurts others or even themselves. They're not looking about the karmic consequences or the legal consequences, and they don't care whether it hurts others at all. And the mode of goodness, they really don't like that so much. There's an interesting example of that at Namesharanya before the Bhagavatam was recited. Lord Balaram came there, and at that time their sacrifices were being disturbed by a great demon, Balwala, who was, and they asked Lord Balaram actually to kill him. And then later on, and he did for them. And then later on, when he came back, it said that the sages understood that all of his killing activities were done, and they were quite happy about it. So even in the cases where killing is done, it's done kind of regretfully, and it was being done not for their own pleasure, but for the fact that they could continue to do sacrifices. This is, such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. And so I think that's referring to the Paurusham, or self-sanction. They're not looking for the laws of Scripture, not following the Vedas in this, but they're doing what they want to do. And Prabhupada says this is called illusion. And all such illusory work is a product of the mode of ignorance, and produces more ignorance, by the way. And Vishwanath, he uses he translates the word shayam. Prabhupada mentions it destroys dharma. He says it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunctions. Vishwanath says it destroys not only that, but knowledge and other good qualities. It increases the mode of goodness, increases the mode of ignorance. So this shayam is, what does it say? Where is it? Destruction. It causes destructions. And so it destroys all those three things, according to him. Not only the scriptural injunctions, but knowledge and other good qualities. So moving on to the next one, we have one who performs his duty without association with the three modes of nature. This is the doer in this case. One who performs his duty, so previously we had the action, now we have the doer, who performs his duty without association with the modes of material nature, without false ego, with great determination and enthusiasm, and without wavering in success or failure, is said to be a worker in the mode of goodness. This is the utsaha, with great enthusiasm and driti, determination. It's not the same as in the mode of passion, where there's lots of energy involved. There's actually, in one sense, more real enthusiasm, because it comes from a confidence in the value of the activity. In the mode of passion, if they're looking for some kind of good result. I think something's going to happen that's going to be really good for them. And if it's not a good result, then they're going to lose their enthusiasm for it. With somebody in the mode of goodness, they have faith in the Vedic injunctions, that if they do the right thing, that's a very good thing, and just to do it is perfect. And so, and they don't care whether it looks like it's going to be a good result or a bad result. It doesn't look like it doesn't matter to them whether it's a really difficult thing to do or not. I said the renunciation in the mode of passion is where you give up things that are hard to do. Apparently those would be the things that also don't look like they're going to produce something all that great. So their enthusiasm is really conditional in the mode of passion. But in the mode of goodness, they have that firm faith in the Vedas. And so under all circumstances, they keep doing it, and therefore, and they're determined. They're able to overcome obstacles and things because of that. Where the people in the mode of passion, when they're fired up, they have a tremendous energy and enthusiasm, but they blow hot and cold. So it's not quite. So that's why when I first read the determination and enthusiasm, I thought, well, it sounds like the mode of passion, but it's not really. And without wavering in success or failure. See, that's particularly mode of goodness. It's said to be a worker in the mode of goodness. And so Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he says, the three types of work have been described, and now the three types of workers are described. Okay? And then Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, a person in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental to the material modes of nature. So we just mentioned that previously. That's the difference between acting in the mode of goodness and acting in bhakti. And in bhakti, you add that you're trying to please Krishna to the equation. He has no expectations for the result of the work entrusted to him, because he is above false ego and pride. Still, he is always enthusiastic till the completion of such work. He does not worry about the distress undertaken. He is always enthusiastic. He does not care for success or failure. He is equal in both distress and happiness. Such a worker is situated in the mode of goodness. So you could, if you look at the, I kind of highlighted the first and the last portion of it there, because the first he says he's always transcendental to the material mode of nature, and at the end he says he's situated in the mode of goodness. Two ways we can explain that. And Prabhupada says those in the path of bhakti. Well, this is my comment. Those in the path of bhakti are on the path of transcendence of pure goodness. But Srila Prabhupada tells us that bhakti will take us first to the mode of goodness and then beyond. So for someone who's starting out, this is a beautiful thing about bhakti, is that we can start out at any stage and begin the process. And so Prabhupada says it will take us to. We read this in the forward, I think, to this preface, I guess, of the Nectar of Instruction, where he says that our first goal is to reach the mode of goodness. But using bhakti, so it's not the same as cultivating mode of goodness separately. But by the power of bhakti, we will come to the mode of goodness, and actions in bhakti have all of the other characteristics if they're properly done. Have all of the qualities of the mode of goodness. So that's how you can other way you can reconcile this. That bhakti, if you're not already in the mode of goodness, will take you there and then beyond. But and otherwise, the actions of bhakti, if they're done properly, have all these characteristics of the mode of goodness. They fulfill those. So you're not only on the path to transcendence, and if you're not already to the mode of goodness, you're heading there. But at the same time, you're fulfilling all of the requirements to be for an action in the mode of goodness. It's an enhancement of the mode of goodness, is what it really is. And then Mukta Sangha, in the translation, Prabhupada says, it is liberated from all material association, without association with the modes of, or in the word for word, the word meaning is liberated from all material association, and in the smooth translation, Prabhupada says, without association with the modes of material nature. And Baladev Vidyabhushan says, devoid of desire for results and the concept of being the doer, Mukta Sangaha. And so, as we can see, where Prabhupada mentioned, he says, that somebody in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental. So his translation there is suitable for someone in bhakti. But then again, he says that they're in the mode of goodness. And Baladev Vidyabhushan is someone who's acting in the mode of goodness, but without bhakti. Someone acting in the mode of goodness, as Prabhupada has mentioned before, cannot transcend the modes of nature. Material mode of goodness won't do that. So someone acting just in the mode of goodness, they won't be liberated from all material association. But someone in Krishna consciousness will be acting on that platform. So Baladev definition is appropriate for the mode of goodness, and Prabhupada applies more to bhakti, which he's emphasizing for our benefit. It really isn't. If you understand Bhagavad Gita at all, it's completely non-controversial what the point of the Bhagavad Gita is, and it's bhakti. And so Prabhupada, and when we understand that, and we go back to reading Bhagavad Gita, the things that don't explicitly deal with bhakti, we're looking for the ways that we can apply that to our bhakti. So when we're looking at the mode of goodness, we're looking, does our devotional service fulfill those requirements? Am I looking for something material out of my bhakti? Then it's not pure bhakti anymore. Am I, how much am I willing to tolerate, something pleasant or unpleasant for Krishna's pleasure? That's a good indication of the depth of our devotion. And that we mentioned earlier, when we covered the first 6 chapters of the Gita, the Prabhupada mentions in the last verse of chapter 6 that all of the other yogas, he says that to understand bhakti minutely, you have to understand these other yogas, because they all some component of each of the other yogas, the karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, are carried over into bhakti. They each have an element, just like the mode of goodness has all these qualities that are preserved, and then you just take it further. So it's like that. So any place you look in the Bhagavad Gita, once we understand what the purpose is, We're not going to practice karma yoga. We're not going to practice jnana yoga. We're not going to practice dhyana or meditational yoga. But we can find things in there that are applicable to bhakti, and that's what Prabhupada does throughout the Bhagavad Gita. That's why you see bhakti in so many places. He wants us to be able to use Bhagavad Gita in our devotional service. He's given us a handbook there. And then 27, the worker who is attached to work and the fruits of work, desiring to enjoy those fruits, and who is greedy, always envious, impure, and moved by joy and sorrow, is said to be in the mode of passion. So there's karma pala, they want the fruits. They're greedy for those things, desiring prepsa and lubda. Himsa atmaka, they're envious of others. They wanna compete with others. There's a mode of real strong competition. A lot of times we're competing for limited resources. Harsha shoka anvita, subject to joy and sorrow, depending on about how it's going. Right? Are they getting what they want or not? So with the mode of goodness, they have that determination, driti, right, and utsaha, enthusiasm, that isn't affected by that. So the people in the mode of passion blow hot and cold. Oh, it's not going to happen, or oh, it's really going to happen. Prabhupada says, such a person has no desire for higher elevation in life. He is simply concerned with making this world as materially comfortable as possible. There's no notion of transcendence in that case. Prabhupada called those, in the second chapter, the Vedavata Ratahas, those who just think that they don't have a conception of liberation or transcendence. Prabhupada says he is generally very greedy, and he thinks that anything attained by him is permanent and never to be lost. Or at least they don't think there's anything that's permanent. And I guess people probably generally realize actually that everybody knows in the back of their mind they're not going to live forever, and that these things that they have can't last forever. But they think if this lifetime is everything, then to them that's their forever. You only live once, people say, all right? So in that case, they think that these things are, if they acquire material things, that it can be there for the duration of their life, which I think is the duration of their existence. So in that way, I think that's what Prabhupada means by permanent and never to be lost. If you think that you die at the time of death, not just your body, then what does it matter? Yes, you can't. They say you can't take it with you, but they don't think you're going anywhere. You and all your possessions are both gone at the same time. And then Prabhupada says, such a person is envious of others and prepared to do anything wrong for sense gratification. Therefore, such a person is unclean. So Prabhupada is explaining the unclean portion here. And he does not care whether his earning is pure or impure. The strong desire for things makes them less objective. Even in our questionable legal system, a judge is supposed to recuse themselves if they have a conflict of interest in the trial. And even and that's a good thing because it protects against somebody deliberately trying to make a decision that benefits themselves. But even if they try to be fair, even if they really try to be fair, it's inevitable that the argument of the side that benefits them will just sound better, and the other one they'll find all the faults. You can't help yourself when you have a strong desire. You can't be objective. You have a vested interest, as we say, and so therefore they will be tempted to do things that aren't legitimate. Just cheat a little bit. Nice guys finish last. All right. And if there's a little bit of a little bit of cheating involved, it's okay. It's pretty good. Just this one case, so it's hard for them to stay firm, and not be rationalize their bad actions. So they become impure. With the mode of goodness, they really stick firmly to the proper action. He is very happy if his work is successful and very much distressed when his work is not successful. That's the Harsha. Harsha, was it? Harsha Shoka Anvitaha, subject to joy and sorrow. Prabhupada explains it. Coming now to 28. The worker who is always engaged in work against the injunctions of the scripture. So in the mode of goodness, they're always following. In the mode of passion, there can be a little deviation here and there, depending on their desires. But here, in the mode of ignorance, a couple of things can happen. They can just think that the wrong thing is right. Oftentimes they do. And the rest of the time it says that they're pramada. They don't have, they're just not paying attention. They're so dull that they don't care. They just don't even think about it. They do what they want to do. And don't even give thought of what's the right thing. So they, and because of the type of desires they have, it generally means that they work against the injunctions of the scripture. They're materialistic, obstinate, cheating, expert in insulting others, and who is lazy, always morose, procrastinating, is said to be a worker in the mode of ignorance. So here's that overall kind of depressed, discouraged type of feeling. In the mode of passion, there's that feeling you can get what you want. It's the American dream. In the mode of ignorance, you just, nothing ever works out. You just know it. Why is life so hard? You never get what you want. So all those things, obstinate, cheating. Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, they work according to the modes of nature, not according to the injunctions of Scripture. So when you're not subjecting yourself to an objective standard of behavior, then you're just doing what comes naturally to you, modes of nature. Prabhupada says such workers are not very gentle, and generally they are always cunning and expert in insulting others. When you're discouraged and unhappy, right, it brings out a lot of anger and makes you cunning and expert in insulting others, not very gentle. You just have a bad attitude, I guess is what we'd say generally, right? They're very lazy, and even though they have some duty, they do not do it properly, and they put it aside to be done later on. Therefore, they appear to be morose. And here at the end, Prabhupada gives a nice little zinger here that, oh God, it sounds like me. They procrastinate. It says they procrastinate anything which can be done in an hour. They drag on for years. Oh God, he's got me understood there. And then he says, "O winner of wealth," in 29, Krishna says, "Now please listen as I tell you in detail of the different kinds of understanding and determination according to the three modes of material nature." So this is dhriti, steadiness, and buddhi. Buddhir, dhriti. The different kinds of intelligence and steadiness or determination in the different modes. Okay. So those are the three things so far today: the action, the doer, and the intelligence, the understanding, and determination. Those are really closely related. By your understanding, your understanding determines the type of determination you'll have. And Prabhupada says, now after explaining knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower, in three different, that was what we had before, in three different divisions according to the modes of material nature, the Lord is explaining the intelligence and determination of the worker in the same way. That's what we had last week, is knowledge, object of knowledge, and the knower. I was a little confused at the beginning of the class, having just prepared for this one. I was thinking we did last time what we were about to do. Prabhupada helped me out there. And 30, so Krishna starts that. He says, "O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done." This is the pravritam nivritam. What is to be feared and what is not to be feared, bhaya, abhaya. What is binding, bandham and moksham, and what is liberating, moksham, is in the mode of goodness. So there's two sides to the Vedic injunctions. There are things that you have to do and things that you shouldn't do. We've gone across this pravritam nivritam before. And so in this context, sometimes we hear that that there's the pravritti marg where you're looking for results and the nivritti where you're looking to renounce. This is used in a different context here in this chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Pravritam are things that you should do, and nivritam are things you should not, prohibitions. You need to know the Vedic injunctions deal with both sides of that equation. And so if somebody in the mode of goodness knows both of those things, they know what's dangerous and what's not, and they know what causes bondage, and they know what causes liberation. And so they take those things into consideration in their action. Prabhupada says, performing actions in terms of the directions of the scriptures is called pravritti, or executing actions that deserve to be performed, and actions which are not so directed are not to be performed. So even Prabhupada makes it even simpler. He says anything that's outside the scripture, you don't do it. But sometimes there's really explicit prohibitions as well. He says, one who does not know the scriptural directions becomes entangled in the actions and reactions of work. Understanding which discriminates by intelligence is situated in the mode of goodness, or which discriminates intelligently, I think is what Prabhupada is saying there. They have intelligence which discriminates properly. They know these things, and that's the mode of goodness. So they're not mistaken, they're not an illusion, they're not mistaken, and they do, that allows them to do the right thing. In ignorance, they just don't know at all. We'll see, and in passion, sometimes there's a rationalization, makes the wrong thing seem good. In 31, Osana that understanding which cannot distinguish between religion and irreligion, dharma and adharma. So again, it parallels that the mode of goodness and is the opposite. Between action that should be done and action that should not be done is in the mode of passion. And sometimes they do it, but because of the conflict of interest that they really want, they want to do this one thing, they want to get it, they feel they can cheat a little bit. It's okay in this case, it's an exception to the rule, only this once. It's not so bad. These kind of things. So they, and they'll see it that way. Rationalization is powerful. They want to see it so badly that, yeah, that's right, it's okay. The exception to the rule. This is only in this case. These kind of things will come to their heads, and they'll convince themselves of it. So that's passion. So sometimes they don't do the right thing. And then that understanding which considers irreligion to be religion, and religion to be irreligion. Adharmam, dharmam. And I think that adharma is dharma. Covered by illusion, it says. Under the spell of illusion and darkness, and strives always in the wrong direction. Viparitan. And all things. Sarva artan viparitam, goes in the wrong directions. That's the mode of ignorance. Just don't have a clue. Just don't have a clue. And Prabhupada says, in his purport, he says, intelligence in the mode of ignorance is always working the opposite of the way it should. It accepts religions which are not actually religions and rejects actual religion. Men in ignorance understand a great soul to be a common man and accept a common man as a great soul. They think truth to be untruth and accept untruth as truth. In all activities, they simply take the wrong path. Therefore, their intelligence is in the mode of ignorance. So this is just beautiful. Moving on to 33. Now he talks about the determination. It's related. Those things are really related. Intelligence and determination. He said first we're going to talk about intelligence and now determination, dritya. O son of Pratha, that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind. This is a yogena avyabhicharinya. And thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. Dharyate, mana. So dharyate, as Prabhupada translates, as one sustains. Mana of the mind, prana, life, indriya, senses. And by this undeviating yoga practice. So that's in the mode of goodness. And here, Prabhupada says he's in agreement with Baladev Vidyabhushan. He says, yoga is a means to understand the Supreme Soul. One who is steadily fixed in the Supreme Soul with determination, concentrating one's mind, life, and sensory activities, that's another meaning of that dharyate, engages in Krishna consciousness. That sort of determination is in the mode of goodness. And Prabhupada says the word avyabhicharinya is very significant, for it indicates that persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness are never deviated by any other activity. Baladev Vidyabhushan has a similar thing here. He says, what kind of yoga is talked about here? He says it's bhakti. Well, let's take a look at that word, because the Prabhupada already kind of gave the two ideas in the purport of what dharyate. It comes from dharana, the sixth limb of Astanga Yoga. So Prabhupada says it sustains. Then that's also one of the core meanings of it. So he says that in his word for word. In the purport, he mentioned how it concentrates those things on the Supreme, the mind, the intelligence, and the senses, and the life force, the prana, concentrating on the Supreme. But it also means, and that's what it means in dharana. The sixth limb of Astanga Yoga refers to concentrating on a particular object. You withdraw the senses in pratyahara, and then you focus it on something else. So that has those two kind of meanings. And for Astanga yogis, it would mean withdrawing the tension from the mind, senses, etc., all those other things that were mentioned, the life airs. And then you focus your attention on the soul or super soul. That's how you do it in the mystic yoga process. So the reason why this is particularly descriptive of bhakti, because for bhakti it's possible to fix all those things mentioned in the verse, the mind, senses, and the prana, on the Supreme. Actually, in Ashtanga Yoga, you withdraw the attention from all of those things and then focus it on the soul or the super soul or Paramatma. But in Bhakti Yoga, yes, you focus those things. You use them in the Lord's service. So you don't withdraw your attention from them. You use the senses, you use the life force, you use the mind in service. So that's another indication that really bhakti is more appropriate here as the understanding. But at least in the mode of goodness, there has to be some control of these things, of the mind, intelligence, and life airs. A mind, life airs, and the senses. But it seems that the real, what's really hinted at in here is bhakti, by the way the verse is constructed. And that's what Prabhupada and Baladev Vidyabhushan both mention. Text 34, that determination by which one holds fast to fruitive results in religion, economic development, and sense gratification is in the nature of passion, O Arjuna. Just also, by the way, in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, even during the place where Krishna is talking about a karma yoga, nishkama karma yoga, he says that still you have to fix you have to be yukta, connected with me. And so even those who are in doing karma or jnana, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that there has to be some mixture of bhakti. So the question in that last verse, whether it's more mode of goodness or whether it's more bhakti, And see that, and the avabacharana, that was used, previously to discuss to describe pure bhakti. So again, it seems that really bhakti is really there. But in the regular, more in this regular mode of goodness, there will still be focus on the supreme. Krishna says you have to be yukta. So there's some admixture of bhakti. It's not the pure bhakti. It's not intense as much. But whatever they do, they're supposed to remember also Krishna. Dedicate your fix your mind on me. He says. He tells them. So you should be if you're not if that's not your whole motivation, somebody in jnana is looking more for realizing the soul and looking for liberation, but they still use bhakti. And somebody in karma yoga, they may be looking to become in a position to start jnana. That's the next step on the yoga ladder, but they will do that. So I can see that. Because generally bhakti is going to be above the mode of goodness, but if they're not deeply engaged in bhakti, if it's as a actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that bhakti used as a anga, a limb of jnana or karma, is in the mode of goodness. So that's probably the more direct meaning of that verse. But if you use that in unflinching, avibacharanyam, it really also makes you think of the pure bhakti. Okay, in 34, but that determination by which one holds fast the fruit of results in religion, economic development, and sense gratification is of the nature of passion, O Arjuna. Okay, so that's kind of sounds familiar. Any person, Prabhupada says, who is always desirous of fruitive results in religious or economic activities, whose only desire is sense gratification, and whose mind, life, and senses are thus engaged, is in the mode of passion. Pretty clear. Prasangena, because of attachment, Prabhupada says, and Baladev Vidyabhushan says that this indicates the association of similarly minded, and he says maybe more experienced persons, which helps reinforce the mentality described in this verse. So he's just mentioning that he sees that also in there. That these kind of things you're encouraged by your association. So yeah, it really works. This is great. You should do it like this. And then in 1835, and that determination which cannot go beyond dreaming, fearfulness, lamentation, moroseness, and illusion, such unintelligent determination, O son of Pratap, is in the mode of darkness. And here Prabhupada explains, he says in the purport that everybody dreams, but here it says dreaming means too much sleep. He says dreaming is always present either in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Dreaming is a natural occurrence. But those who cannot avoid oversleeping, who cannot avoid the pride of enjoying material objects, who are always dreaming of lording over the material world, and whose life, mind, and senses are thus engaged, are considered to have determination in the mode of ignorance. Now, my comment here, because it also sounds dreaming of lording over the material world sounds like the mode of passion. The difference with the mode of ignorance is that you don't have any realistic plans to do it or ability to sustain any efforts to do it. It's more just in your imagination. You have desires, but you can't act on them. You don't have that you can't have long-term gratification. You want it now. You don't have energy. You're mostly escaping. That's why the sleeping and all this kind of stuff. You're miserable in the world. You don't have optimism, and you just want to escape. Generally, they're looking to escape. But they would like to enjoy. They wish their life was filled with enjoyment. And because they're not, and it doesn't seem to work out for them, then there's discouragement and desire just to sleep and to be distracted and to escape in some way or other. So they have those desires, but they can't really work towards them. No concrete plans, no ability to really focus and do it. Whatever takes would take 1 hour, they carry on for years, as Prabhupada says. And 36, O best of the Bharatas, now please hear from me about the 3 kinds of happiness, which the conditioned soul enjoys, and by which he sometimes comes to the end of all distress. Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, a conditioned soul tries to enjoy material happiness again and again. Thus he chews the chewed. But sometimes, in the course of such enjoyment, he becomes relieved from material entanglement by association with a great soul. In other words, a conditioned soul is always engaged in some type of sense gratification. But when he understands by good association that it is only a repetition of the same thing, and he is awakened to his real Krishna consciousness, he is sometimes relieved from such repetitive so-called happiness. A point I'd like to make, I said, look, we've had so much material happiness, so many pleasant sensations and things throughout the course of our life. If we could, hang on to even a tiny fraction of a percentage of them, wow, we'd really be happy all the time. But where the happiness comes and it fades away, and it's just a memory. So as I said, with some good association, somebody can realize, it doesn't seem to be working out so well. And if they can understand there's a better alternative, they might go ahead and do that. Some of the other commentators, they say that the second half of this verse, where it says that they sometimes end all distress, is referring more to the next, belongs with the next verse. It's in this verse, but it's already starting to talk. That Krishna is just saying, "O best of the Bharatas, please hear from me about the 3 kinds of happiness." And then in the second part he says, Vyasad, by practice, one enjoys the relief of all distress. And they said for there they're talking about the mode of goodness, happiness in the mode of goodness. But here Prabhupada gives us this a little bit different take, where he says that sometimes through good association you can do that, and he leaves the other one as self-contained. The next verse is self-contained as describing the happiness and mode of goodness. So in the next one, 37, Krishna says, that which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar. It's Amrit. And which awakens one to self-realization is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. Amrit technically is deathlessness without death. It's immortal. So we're tasting. Because what happens is that we're tasting the higher taste. At least to the point of soul realization in the mode of goodness. That when somebody is in the mode of goodness, they give up the sensory types of enjoyment, and then within them arises at least under some the happiness of the soul. As this is the soul is Atmarama, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in the mode of goodness you feel some of that. That's why there's that feeling of inner satisfaction. That's why it's Amrit. It's a special type. It's like the higher taste. May not be, the higher taste of devotion, but it's the higher taste of the just natural feeling of happiness, internal happiness that comes from the soul. You get some ability to perceive that in the mode of goodness. Prabhupada says, in the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations to control the mind and the senses, and to concentrate the mind on the self. All these procedures are very difficult, bitter like poison. But if one is successful in following the regulations and comes to the transcendental position, he begins to drink real nectar and he enjoys life. This next one I should have. This is from Vishwanath Chakravarti. I'll have to go back and fix that. I don't have a citation here. And so since he was thinking that the two lines of the previous verse also are part of this idea, he uses this word, the word for practice. And Prabhupada also, he says, anyway, you have to follow all these things, in order to make it happen. But there's, in the previous verses, abhyasad, by practice, Prabhupada translates it. And here, Vishwanath says, only by constant practice does a person enjoy the results. This means that it is not like happiness derived from sense objects, which gives pleasure just on contact. He says, in the beginning, sattvic happiness is like poison, since restraining the senses and mind causes suffering. So Prabhupada also seems to incorporate that understanding. He says, in the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations, so there's a practice involved. So, where there's kind of, two ways to do things, Prabhupada usually, he'll do it one way, and then he'll incorporate the other way also in the purport, so he doesn't miss anything. That's what purports are for. One thing that I'm going to comment here, though, is that bhakti, in the mode of goodness, so there's a long practice in order for then the soul realization to start coming up. So there's that's why it's poison in the beginning, and pretty much only poison, and then after a certain time, then the nectar begins to flow in bhakti. Because when we think about this in bhakti, as we try to make progress, sometimes we do have to, drink a little poison maybe. We try to have to control ourselves a bit more than we would otherwise, especially if we're trying to move forward in the practice. We may have to do things that we wouldn't otherwise do. But right away in bhakti, there's something happening. You feel the higher taste, which is encouraging. So that there may be, as we try to advance, a little bit of the unpleasantness, but even from the very beginning, people come and actually we were when I was in Hawaii, right? I was hearing about how people were becoming devotees just having tasted prasadam. We heard two stories about that. And, so the higher taste was right there immediately. There wasn't even any poison. Then as we try to progress, then we take up the practice more seriously, then there's a little bit of poison comes in, but there's some happiness right from the start. And here, and I quote here Bhagavad Gita 9:2, that this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion. It is everlasting and joyfully performed susukam. In the mode of goodness, it's poison for a while, and then the happiness comes. Another good reason to practice bhakti. And then that happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be the nature of passion. And Prabhupada gives there's the whole the whole genre of music, popular music, the blues, which talk about this. And Prabhupada gives a hint on this. Right away, he says, a young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end, or after some time, it becomes just like poison. And he explains, he says, they are separated, or there is divorce, there is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. There's the blues. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. And then he says, happiness derived from a combination of the senses and the sense object is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. And so here I've quoted from the little explanation of that in chapter 5:22. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses, O son of Kunti. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So there's the two things. Whatever you have that's enjoyable may flip on you. You may lose it. You may become, here Prabhupada says there may be divorce or separation. It doesn't last somehow. If it's from a relationship or your business goes sour or whatever it is, whatever you have, things may change. And even otherwise, in all cases, the pleasure that comes through the senses, it's temporary. It's gone, and you need more. I said we can't. We've had so much pleasure in our lifetime. Of course, thankfully, the pain doesn't always remain either. But we have so much pleasure, but we can't taste it anymore. We can't access it. It just disappears and leaves you hungry for more. It makes the desires even greater. So just it never works. It leaves you dissatisfied, wanting more, feeling sad that it's not there. So it seems that different kind of the pleasures of the senses are going to be good. And as Vishwanath says, they're effective immediately. And that's what's so tempting about them. Yes, and then, okay, when it's over, that's okay. But then we become dependent upon those things for our happiness, instead of the inner happiness that comes from the mode of goodness. We get focused on that. And that's our problem. We're focused on the input of the senses and take them very seriously. And are looking to try to make them as pleasant as possible all the time. But the stimulations don't last, and then you're stuck in the cycle. 39. And that happiness which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from beginning to end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be of the nature of ignorance. Again, escapism, pleasures. And Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, one who takes pleasure in laziness and sleep is certainly in the mode of darkness, ignorance, and one who has no idea how to act and how not to act is also in the mode of ignorance. For the person in the mode of ignorance, everything is illusion. There is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. And they're starting out at a miserable. And everything they're trying to do, it fails. It never breaks their misery. It usually makes it worse because they're doing the wrong things. You can't really escape. You try to sleep and you wake up. And by sleeping all the time, you can't try to change your circumstances in any way. You can't engage in self-realization, by doing illegal activities and such things. It's not helping you. This causes you more distress or not fun in the beginning or the end. So for the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of ephemeral happiness in the beginning. And at the end, distress. Before the person in the mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in the beginning and the end. So 3 kinds of happiness. And the 4th one, Krishna consciousness, where it's similar to the mode of goodness, but the taste is coming out sooner. And now 40, there is no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems which is free from these 3 modes, born of material nature. And Prabhupada says, the Lord here summarizes the total influence of the 3 modes of material nature all over the universe. And Vishwanath kind of explains it a little bit more detail here, explains what Prabhupada's saying. He says, indicating those things not mentioned, the Lord now summarizes this section. There is nothing, no living species or non-living things, he says, which is free from the 3 gunas born of Prakriti. Everything in existence is composed of the 3 gunas. The meaning of this section is that sattvic goodness items are acceptable and those of rajas and tamas are not. It's pretty clear, I think. We could see which one is preferred and that the other 2 are not useful. So 41, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the modes, material modes, O chastiser of the enemy. And these last 4 verses, the Prabhupada doesn't give any purports. They're pretty self-explanatory. But the Vishwanath gives a little bit of explanation, so I've included his commentary here in these verses. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, however, the living body filled with the 3 gunas becomes successful by worshipping the Supreme Lord by prescribed activities according to the person's nature. This is actually going to be the start of the topic for next time. This is described in 6 verses. These activities or duties designated precisely by the gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas, which manifested by birth, svabhavena, are prescribed for the brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, and shudras. And then in 42, peacefulness, self-control, austerity, so it's shama, dhamma, tapa, purity, shocham, shanti, tolerance, arjavam, honesty, jnanam, knowledge, wisdom, or his vijnanam, wisdom, applied knowledge, astikyam, religiousness. Those who, a Gnostic is somebody who doesn't follow, who denies the Vedas, doesn't follow them. Astikyam follows the Vedas. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. We can kind of see those, when we looked at the other elements in the mode of goodness, you can see why those things would be there. Because they are, as Vishwanath says here, it says, this verse describes the natural activities of the Brahmana, who has a predominance of sattva. He's mostly in goodness. Controller of the inner sense organ, this is the mind. Sometimes they use that, they call it antakarana, the internal sense organ. Kind of a usage we're not used to. It just means the mind. Control of the external senses, austerity of the body, mind, and words, jnana and vijnana, which arise from understanding the scriptures, and firm faith in the purport of the scriptures, astakyam, are the, he says in the purport of the scriptures, faith in the scriptures anyway, are the activities of the Brahmana arising from this nature. And those who deny the Vedas are Gnostics. So it says they have faith in the scriptures. 43, we're coming to the end here, this one, the next verse. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity, and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. It's in generosity is interesting too. Because as Vishwanath says, he says, this verse describes the activities of the Kshatriya in whom Rajaguna becomes predominant and Sattva becomes secondary. So we heard in the Rajaguna that people are envious and kind of selfish, but they have that they have the goodness in them, which means that they protect others. So, the Kshatriyas, they will fight, and they will put themselves at risk to protect others. The Kshatriya, Prabhupada says, means etymologically, shat means to hurt, and trayate means to protect from hurt. So they use their abilities to protect others, and they put themselves at risk to do so. That shows the element of goodness creeping through. And he says, that this verse describes the activities of the Kshatriya in whom Rajaguna becomes predominant and Sattva becomes secondary. Courage, confidence, fortitude, and controlling others, Ishvara Bhava, and not fleeing from battle are the activities of the Kshatriya. That's also some mode of goodness there too. Right? They will be killed. They won't flee. Although for them they're also promised to go to heavenly planets, so that can become motivated a little bit. It's both things, right? They might be, if they have a little longer term view, they can think to be killed is okay. Krishna tells Arjuna that happy are the Kshatriyas when such opportunities for fighting come unsought, because they open the gates to the heavenly planets. So I guess they have both going for them. Maybe a little bit of goodness, so that they follow the rules, but also that they even in defeat, they have something to be gained that will give them enthusiasm to continue. And then in 44, this will be the last verse we cover today. Farming, cow protection, Goraksha, and business. This is Vanijam, trade, Prabhupada says in the word for word, are the natural work for the Vaishyas. And for the Shudras, there are labor and service to others. So we've got the Vaishyas and the Shudras together. And for the Shudras, there are labor and service to others. He says, Padacharya, and karma duty is what they do. We heard before that that's their kind of redeeming character. They're in a place where they can be elevated from their position if they're respectful to the higher castes and serve them properly. And Vishwanath here, he says, this verse describes the actions of the Vaishyas predominated by Rajas, with tamas as a secondary guna. So that the Kshatriyas were in passion, but had sattva secondary, and they have Rajas, but there's tamas, or ignorance, is the secondary one. Protecting cows and commerce are the activities of the Vaishya. One who protects the cows is called Goraksha. And he says the state of protecting the cows is called Goraksham. And he says the verse also speaks of the Shudras in whom tamas predominates and rajas is secondary. Serving the Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Brahmanas is the activity of the Shudras. And in the Varnashram system, so the Vaishyas will, because of that heavy mode of passion and with ignorance instead of goodness, they tend to be very greedy, and they want to just earn more and more and more and more and more and more. And in the Vedic culture, that is allowed, but they're taxed like 50%, and they have to give in charity. Right? So the Vedic society, which is a very cooperative one, they allow those people who are really greedy to earn as much as they possibly can, but they don't get to keep it all. So the society, and so they really finance everything in the rest of the society. And because of their greed, they're willing to do it. Now in these day and age, the Vaishyas are getting in control, so they want to keep it all, and they can't get enough, and. They already have so much of it, but they want to get more, and they want to keep it all. They don't want to, there's some who, give some away, but a lot of them want to hang on to it. So, all right, so that's covers the section for today, more of the three modes, and we'll pick up 45 next time. It looks like we're going to finish in 4 sessions. The purports weren't too long in this chapter, even though there's 78 verses total. So we've been making pretty quick progress.